I added a full air horn to the Cybertruck. On today's video, the air horn you just saw installed, I put it in the truck and I put a button up here on the dash to make it work. I'll walk you through as quick as I can where I got it, how long it took to install, how I did it, and would I do it again? And spoiler alert, it is. What's in the box? All the little hardware you'd need, the little wire connectors, some directions, a relay, some wiring, the horn, and the canister. So there's probably a bunch of ways to do this, but how I installed this horn was I used that front feed of the trunk, and obviously you can see here, I removed this whole shell area, which is on the ground here behind me. Now I'm not gonna do that on the video because I wanted to make it as quick as possible. Now if you're not sure how to do this and you are interested, I'll put the link down in the description below of a video where I implicitly just step-by-step walk through how to do this whole process, but most of it's done here with a 10mm socket. Pretty simple. And now that I got that whole front liner shell out, it's time to install the horn. To begin with, there's one major electrical component you're gonna have to add to make this all work. So this little component, as you can see, if you get in close there, actually says it operates off 12 volts. And that's because 99.9% of cars out there run off of a 12 volt system. In fact, other Teslas do, but the Cybertruck runs off of that 48. And so if you're looking to buy this, you're looking for something that starts with a 48 volt and transforms to a 12. 48, which is the truck, 12, which all these little minor systems like the horn we're putting into today run off of. And so that's what I have here. This is the transformer. Now, in full disclosure, I've already had this in my truck now for a few months because I'm using this to operate my electric running board. So if you can see here, my running boards that flip open when I open a door and they retract back when I shut it, those are also a 12 volt system. The motor that opens those is 12 volts. So I had to get this little transformer here, and this transforms from the 48 of the truck down to that 12. Now I still have available power left into this, so I'm gonna dual tap into this, which I'm getting the power from the front feed of my truck. I'll go into later how to turn that on. Next, it comes with two very long wires. Now I've already begun installing this. I'm gonna stop and kind of back up and show you what I'm doing. Now this first one here is like a thicker wire, and the second one here is a little bit thinner wire. Now likely the large wire is going to be on the positive side, which is carrying the bulk of the voltage, and the smaller wire is going to be the common, or what we refer to as a neutral, like a home. So the next step we're going to get into here is I'm going to take both those wires and strip them all the way down on the very ends to give me somewhere to connect to on each of those. Both of these wires come with insulation all over the end, so I'm going to have to strip it down. So I just got a basic set of Milwaukee strippers, wire strippers. So I'm going to clear off these end and then also the other end. And that's what you can see what I'm doing here. I just stripped off typically what is, a ½ inch on each of those. Now both of these wires are just a stranded wire, which gives me enough to tie on to. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to do to the ends of those two wires. So two of these I know I'm going to splice in with wire nut, but then two more I'm going to put on some of these little connections that came with it. These are just little female wire attachments, and I'll do that because this little air canister for the air horn has two little male adapters on it, so that's where I'm going to hook these females right to that after I put this end and crimp it on the wire. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, this little guy right here is my transformer transforming that voltage down. So that's running into this little connection here, which is going to my electric running boards. I'm going to end up cutting these right here and splicing in and just wire nutting these together, so the power is going to come out here directly with the correct voltage right to this little air horn here. It's a little different than how the instructions tell you to do it. The instruction here gives you, honestly, a pretty detailed wire diagram, and it shows you how it's going to include this little guy here, which is just a relay. Now, the reason they have the more complicated wiring diagram is this is designed to tap into the actual horn of the car. Now, the Cybertruck and any other Tesla out there, it's unique because your horn plays a whole lot of other sounds. So our horn is not just a standard horn sound that's touching two wires together, it's electronic. So I want to leave that as is. So I can still set and play around, do some fun stuff with my Cybertruck horn and not lose the capability of that while adding the air horn. So I'm just adding the air horn in, and I have a little button that I'm wiring in series, so I'll be able to touch that and honk the horn whenever I want and not mess with the horn of the truck. I think that's pretty important to what I'm trying to do. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just cutting that wire that I have currently running to my running board, splicing it off, and just stripping all of those ends back. And I'm eventually going to tie into those with a wire nut. The two wires are going to run to my horn. And for what it's worth, I tried the smallest little connection first, the one with the pink, and it didn't quite fit good. So I went ahead and put those ones with the yellow end on them, on all of them. They were a little bit larger, but as long as I crimped it on tight, which I did here, it didn't seem to be a problem. The horn itself came with a bunch of different bolts and like a bracket that you could put on two little clasps here. This top clasp just moves up and down, so you can adjust this to where it best fits to wherever your application is. And this clip on the back can rotate to unscrew this horn completely off if you need to. So in the exact application I'm doing, I'm choosing to leave that little bracket off because this fits perfect here inside the truck. Now I would have used it had I put it up on the roof, which where I was considering, because I just put this large roof rack that I got from a company called Test Studio. There's a whole video on this. I'll put that in the link below if you want to see it. but I was planning on potentially putting this up here. And I actually thought this could look really cool up here, but I would have to use a different feed, and for some other reasons, including the fact that this rack's only semi-permanent for me. There's a chance I'll be removing it a couple times off and on, and I didn't want to have to redo the electric and all that. For the time being, I thought it made too much sense to be down there in the front, but one potential benefit of being up top, it would actually be louder, it wouldn't be hidden. And in case you're not aware exactly how an air horn works, is you have this little canister here that's actually creating the wind, pushing the oomph out. That connects through a rubber tube here into the horn itself, so when it blows out, it makes that cool noise. So the electric is all on this, and this part here is just literally the trumpet that makes the noise when the air comes out. And I'm telling you, this thing's crazy loud. Coming into this project, I had every intention of mounting this, but I ended up finding a way where I could just wedge this horn back into the truck in a void where it just sets really nice and secure. And because the little liner's gonna go back in here, there was nowhere for it to go, so that's where I'm leaving it for now. So it fits really snug back in this area here, but in a second, I'm gonna give you a second potential place you can put it. But as long as it's secure and you can hide all these wires, you'll be fine. There's one alternate spot where I decided to maybe put the horn instead, which actually still fits really nice and actually makes it, I think, a touch louder because it's not hiding behind the shell. It actually kind of peeks out here, which is way up top. So you can see here, there's plenty of room. I can kind of stash it down in there. And there's my little motor and the horn, and it still fits snug. Either place would work, it just takes a little bit more wire to get it up there. And like I said, if you're really trying to get this loud, you could even mount it somewhere underneath or up top, like I was showing you earlier. Less restrictions, gonna be more noise. Okay, so something I have to figure out now is where I actually want this little horn button to go here in the truck. So initially I was thinking, can I rig it away to get up here through the steering wheel, but there's really not enough room here. Then I was thinking like I could tap into the dash along here, but then I'd be putting a hole in the dash and in the little carbon fiber cover I have here. So I didn't love that either. And then I was kind of thinking, oh, this area down here looks good. But then I realized with the door shut, it covers that. So then I started looking here in the center console. Like I was just really thinking, how am I going to do this? I thought about rigging up a little handle, but I didn't want it to be too hokey. So I think what I settled on is I'm actually going to make a little hole down here in the vinyl of my actual hole somewhere around here. Now I feel strong enough about this that I'm going to leave this horn in here indefinitely, hopefully years and years and years. And it's a pretty common one, so if I have to replace this, that shouldn't be a big deal. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty small hole, but it probably will be noticeable. But if it's there on the black, that should be pretty easy to fix if I absolutely had to. And obviously it's a little on the dark side to get down there. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm going to pop this little panel open here. I don't know if you've seen this before, but you got to pull out this whole little weather stripping here. Then you'll pop this panel out. But that'll also be where I'll fish the wire from the front. So I'll end up fishing the wire down through this little area here. I'll pull it out here and then kind of tuck it back in, pull it out here and tap the hole. The dash actually opens up pretty easy. There's a little end cap. You have to have the door open to get it out. Once you pop that out, there's a little piece of plastic that runs all the way down to the edge of the seat. And as you'll see here, when I move this little rubber to the side, you can actually see like daylight through, so that'll be where we'll pass it through. And then there's this little thing right here, which this is just a little rubber grommet that's filling that hole. So when that pops open, that's a void that goes into the truck. So I'm gonna put the wire in through there, fish in between, eventually kind of tap into here. As you can see, I can get a little bit behind here. It's gonna be tight, but I'll make that work. To show you what I just did is I've got 3 different wires. Now I've run them along the back here. I've got them sticking out here. There's 2 white wires and a red wire. Why those colors? Well, that's what I had in my garage. And now I've got them to this point. Now I'm gonna feed them up through that front of the truck to outside the door that I talked about earlier. And to help me feed that wire through, I have one of these like semi-flexible fish tapes. This works really good to tape that wire on the end and then push it through. All right, so that's exactly what I'm doing here. First thing I did is I kind of ran it behind everything I would potentially need to, all different wires and things like that. Because once I got it taped to this, obviously I can't take it back off. So I taped those 3 wires, all this little fish tape, as you can see here, pushed it through. You can see here, I'm actually pushing it through here. It's gonna pop out the other end. And here on the other side, you can see I pushed through all the way up to here. So now I'm just gonna take this tape off and then fish the wire in through this little hole I mentioned earlier. So that's what I am gonna do here. I'm gonna untape the wires from this little push rod, and then I'm gonna actually retape all the end of these 3 wires back together to make them stronger, because I'll have to eventually fish these back down into the truck here, but it goes through a little cavity where I do need to put a little bit of force, so taping them together did make it easier to be able to fish these all through. So without getting too technical, the white wire, which is the fatter wire for me, which is actually usually a common, but I'm going to use it as the positive because it's larger. You're always going to carry slightly more voltage in that large wire. So the reason I'm running 2 is normally I would just connect 1 wire right to the horn, but if that's the case, that horn would be on all the time. Obviously, that's not what I want. So what we're doing is, instead of running that white wire directly from the transformer, I'm actually running it down here into the truck through that switch and then back out, completing the circuit, and then into the horn. That way, when I press the horn, I connect that circuit. Now the red wire is because I'm also running a common up to that so I can actually have light, because I need a positive and a neutral to make that little light inside that horn light up. So then I stripped the end of that white wire and then crimped on another little female end, because this is what's actually going to hook on that little cartridge. And then the red wire, which is my common, I'm going to tie this directly back into the wire nut that is the common. So I'll have 3 wires coming out of that now. The actual common coming out of the transformer, the common going to my running boards, and now the common going up towards the front of the truck. Okay, so I take the long, thin black wire, which is the common side. I cut that basically right down the middle. So half of that I just tap right into the common coming off the transformer. Then that leaves the common splitting out that I run into one end of the red, which then runs through the horn switch and back out and returns the circuit. So before this, I had the common running out of the little transformer, and then it was running from that transformer to the running board. Well, now I need to run it out of that. I'm going to tee off there, so I'm still running to the running board, but now I'm running to the air horn. Now I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to wire up this little horn switch, because again, we have 4 wires. Now this thing does come apart. So really we have 2 pieces here, and there's just a little clip here on the side. So when this clip is out, this totally separates. And then you can see those little nubs there actually click into here. Now on this, it's actually labeled. So I don't know how you can see this here, but the top has a little plus sign by it, and the bottom has a little neutral sign by it. And then across the middle, those 3 tabs are a series of relays, normally closed, normally open. So if we wanted to just use this button as a horn off and on all the time, I would connect the wires to the 2 terminals that are the NO for normally open. And then I'll know what color is what, because this only fits back in here one way. So doing this, I know that the positive is on top, which has to be my red, and then immediately to its adjacent bottom left for you is going to be the green. So green, which is commonly ground on indoor homes, is going to be also the common here on this switch. All right, so I'll end up posting a wire diagram here to kind of show you how I drew this out to do it for myself. But right now I just have these 3 wires undone and just 2 wires done, because it was a little bit more complicated than I was expecting. I had to get my meter out and test continuity, all that kind of fun stuff. But as it is right now, I have it hooked up to where it's the common and the normally open, meaning when I press the button, it closes the switch. So how about a quick test honk? This thing is so loud. All right, and quick note, if you're interested in the shenanigans I'm pulling off in this video, you want to subscribe, because in a coming week here, I'm putting in one of these, the old-fashioned foot pedals that I'm going to operate my light bar with up top and not have to use the screen anymore. You're going to want to see that. So now that I gave it that little test honk and I know it works, I'm going to go ahead and throw this little shell back up in here before I finish that wiring on the inside. So I'm going to mount this up on that dash, as we previously said. Now the trick is selecting the right drill bit. So as you can see here, I have to get a drill bit that is wide enough to go over the threads, but small enough to where that washer won't pull through, which can be kind of tricky. Now, I'd always want to err on the side of being small. Now, if I go too big, I can always find a washer and make it work, but ideally you get it the right size. And again, I'd rather err on the side of small, because it's easier to round out the hole than obviously you can't make the hole smaller once you make it. So I've scheduled on a 5/8 drill bit. And I went with what's called a spade drill bit, just because I feel like that's wide enough and it's easiest to make it work. And as you can see, 5/8 is that perfect size. I did my best to kind of feel around to make sure I was drilling this hole in the right spot, making sure I wasn't going to drill into anything important, but also to make sure I had enough space to actually put the washer on. The hole itself was perfectly sized, and the little horn fit in there perfectly. The only problem was it was a little more difficult than I expected to get behind it to be able to tighten it down. So I ended up getting my drill out and taking the screws out and removing even more of this lower dash. Should have done this from the beginning, because it got a lot easier once I did that. And not only could I tighten it up nice and securely, it was way easier to stash all that wire in there. So again, should have done this from the beginning. That was the way to do it. And it was just a couple standard size screws that just pulled out and put them back in. And the other benefit of pulling this dash down more is I could actually tuck the wires back in there with a little bit of freedom and not worrying about them coming off their terminals. All right, now here's a look of it all buttoned up. Woo, it looks nice and pretty, looks stock. In fact, you don't even hardly notice it's there. The fact that it has the little horn symbol on it, I think that really helps to know that, okay, this isn't obvious that this is a horn, and it makes it look more factory, makes it look more like it belongs, make it look like you did this on purpose. My neighbors love me. So this horn has got to be one of the coolest things I put in my truck yet, and I put a lot of cool things. And the benefit about this is it's not very expensive. Now it is a little labor intensive, takes a little bit of time, a little bit of thought. It's not just plug and play. Now I got this horn from a company here called Moto Horn. I actually got 3 of them because I'm putting one in both of my Rivians. See behind me there? If you think the Cybertruck horn is weak, then you don't want to hear the Rivian horn. Boy, that is pathetic. I'm almost embarrassed to use it. Now, I didn't show the wiring of the actual light on that horn switch. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. I didn't want to bore you all, make this a technical video. I think you just wanted to see if I could put an air horn and if it worked. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. The foot pedal brights coming your way.